You're tuned in to the Brand Ambassador Select Podcast.
How's it going? As always, welcome to the Brand Ambassador Select Podcast. I'm your host, Lenore. Trying to find a new place to live can be super stressful. I always remember my dad repeating the same thing over and over again about finding a home. I swear, I'm literally going to hear this in my sleep for the rest of my life. It's the 3 L's of real estate. Location, location, and location. It's super, super, super important. Then when you finally figure out where you would like to live, sometimes you have to deal with landlords. And most of the time, we get nervous since we believe that they have all the power. But what I recently learned is that the renters actually have way more power than they think. And this is the part where I'm going to stop talking and I'm actually going to bring on our expert for today. So learning that renters have all this power actually came from the book Rental Secrets, Reduce Your Rent, Get Better Value, and Create Quality Communities. It's by Justin Pogue. In the book, he teaches readers how to relieve the stress and pressure landlords of property rental businesses face, which can save hundreds and hundreds of dollars when you actually rent a home. So Justin is absolutely brilliant. He's a real estate consultant, and his journey began when he started purchasing properties on the Lands Available list in Florida. So I'm hoping to get him to spill a lot more of these renter secrets for us. No promises, though. Justin Pogue, welcome to the Brand Ambassador Select Podcast.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
I do have to say, I absolutely love your book cover, Rental Secrets. The whole ripping of the wall and the paper, absolutely brilliant. Just gotta say.
Yeah.
But I do have a ton of questions for you. It's not even funny. So if I just read them off, don't think that I don't care about your discussions. It's just I have so much stuff I feel like I want to cover, and you have all this information that we definitely want to share with the viewers today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a really interesting topic, especially with what's going on right now in the rental market.
Okay, so before we really dive in, tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to be such a successful real estate consultant.
Well, it's interesting. I didn't start out planning to be that. So I was in graduate school, and when I graduated, this was around the 2001, 2002 timeframe, and I was planning to be a management consultant, and that whole industry just blew up because the dot-com bubble blew up. So I needed a plan B, and real estate ended up being that plan B. So I started doing some investing with my parents, and we got some multifamily properties together, and we got up to 72 units. And then I also spent some time working for a corporation managing some of their properties. But one day I'm in the bookstore, and I saw something that I hadn't seen before. And I'm looking at the real estate section, and all the books were for owners, managers, and investors. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's a stakeholder group that's missing here. And it's the 43 million households that are bringing $500 billion to the table every year in terms of rent. And nobody's talking to them.
Yeah. Okay. Keep going.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling, especially since I can get advice on buying a refrigerator or a car or any of those things, but there's no advice for rent, which is like the major expense that most people have in their financial world going on. So that's what kind of inspired me to use my experience to write a book. And my experience as a property manager served as the foundation for what I have in the book.
So your book, Rental Secrets, describes how people have more power, like the renters have more power than they think. What's the power? Can you tell us the power?
Yeah, so there are actually multiple sources of power that people have, but at the foundation of all of it is renters typically don't understand how landlords think and why they do what they do. And in any negotiation, that's the most important factor, is knowing what the pain points of the other person in the negotiation are, so that you can address those while you're having that conversation. And the very first thing that people need to understand is that they can actually negotiate. That is possible. And a lot of people feel helpless and powerless when they go in to talk to a landlord. But understanding that you can negotiate, that's the first place that where your power starts to come from, because landlords are looking for quality residents. They're looking for people who have great jobs. They're looking for people who can pay the rent on time. They want people who get along well with others and will follow the community rules. And in most cases, That's the average renter. So they're looking for you. So that's where power starts to come from. And then beyond that, there is a massive amount of competition for those people.
Yeah, so that's the $1 million question I have. What's the real meaning of our rents are competitive with the market then?
Oh, that's a great industry phrase. And it sounds like, okay, rents are competitive with the market. You've done all the homework for me. I don't have to worry about it. This is the best deal that I can get since sliced bread. And it really doesn't mean that. What it means is their community is in a certain location. They've gone out maybe about a mile, draw a circle around their community. They've compared themselves to other communities that they deem are comparable, and they're matching themselves against that. That has nothing to do with you. You chose that place because it's 15 minutes, say, west of your job. And because it's easy commute and all of that. Well, there are other places that are 15 minutes east of your job that may actually fit what you're looking for. They're not including those because it doesn't fit in their little circle. So there are opportunities out there for places for you to rent that they aren't looking at. And part of the reason why that phrase doesn't make a lot of sense from the renter perspective is because they're not looking at it from your perspective. They're looking at it from their perspective.
So then I don't get it. How did they draw their line? How did they determine what places, I guess, are competitive with them?
They're looking at places that are close to, that are nearby, in the same neighborhood, similar amenities, similar setup as far as, is it garden style or is it a high rise? Those are the factors that they're looking at. But they're not looking at, this is 15 minutes. This community is a 15-minute commute for Lenore. So let's look at all the communities that are 15-minute commutes for Lenore and choose our prices based on that. They're not doing that. They're looking at it from their perspective because they don't know you yet. You haven't even approached them yet. So they don't know that they need to look at it from that perspective. So when they say their rents are competitive with the market, it's just their determination of what their market is. Well, in your mind, the properties that you're looking at, that's the market that matters because that's what you're going to make your choices based on as a renter.
And there's our power as renters right there. Yeah,
right there. You are defining what your market is, and don't let them define it for you.
Okay, so Justin, say right now, I'm looking to rent a property.
Okay.
What's the best time to do so?
That is an excellent question, because when most people go out and look for an apartment, they're looking in the summer months, the time period that we're in right now. They're graduating from school, or they're trying to get their family situated before the school year starts. So everybody's looking now. And landlords know this, and they're charging more now.
Cool.
Summer, especially when we get into the June, July timeframe, they're charging more because they know there's all this movement going on.
I can see that.
If you wait until the December, January kind of timeframe, a lot less movement, a lot fewer people looking for apartments, but there are still apartments that become available because people change jobs, they need to move for whatever reasons. And filling those apartments when there's less traffic is harder from a landlord standpoint. So they're willing to make deals. And the part of the reason why they're willing to make deals is because they don't want to wait another 6 months until the busy season comes around again. They want to collect rent for that 6 months. Because one of the peculiar features of real estate is if it's vacant, you're not getting any money. And it's worse, you can never get that money back. Like if it was vacant last month, you're not going to see that money ever again. So there's this that creates a bias towards action on the landlord's part.
Now,
and that's why renting in winter can really save you money, because they're willing to discount it to get people in the door.
Oh, I totally understand that logic. You know what? Sometimes you think about it, it's like, oh, wow, that makes sense. Why didn't I think of that? Type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these secrets they're out there in plain sight for people to see, but they don't work in the industry. They don't see those kinds of possibilities for themselves. And if you already have the impression that you're going to be kind of helpless and powerless in this negotiation or conversation anyway, you're not going to put a lot of thought into ways to better your situation.
So right now we're in those summer months, so it's prime time obviously for people to look for new places. Is this economically a good time to rent a place? I feel like you're like, oh, did she really just
No,
ask me that?
it's a good question, especially with everything that's going on. It really depends on what your needs are specifically. So if you've gotten a job in a new city, you definitely need to move, rent the places you need to rent, get situated, all of that. But we know that there are a lot of people whose situations are a little more precarious right now from a financial standpoint. So I would be looking at, if I don't need to take on that monthly obligation, let's not do that right now. There's a lot of uncertainty going on out there, not only related to people's individual jobs, but also in terms of the companies that people are working for. Just because you may have been deemed essential for right now, that doesn't necessarily mean that next month you will still be, essential to that company. So typically in times of uncertainty, I would avoid taking on year-long obligations if you don't have to.
So what I hear is save now, and then once we hit December and January, during the lower seasons when the prices are better, then you get out there.
Yeah, I would always advise people to wait if you can. Not everybody can, but if you can wait until that time frame, it makes a lot of sense, because that savings can be, depending on what apartment you're looking for and what city you're in, that savings of waiting can be as much as 7%, which is huge when your rent is $1,000. That's like an extra $70 a month.
It's nice.
Which is like part of a car payment or groceries, or heck, just going to the movies. I mean, it's money you can spend any way you want to.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. So now, okay, so Justin, I found places I like. Which one do I choose? Do I go with the bigger bathroom? Do I go with the bigger closet? How do I decide?
So the choice kind of boils down to a couple of different buckets. So one bucket involved in that choice is just personal preference. Which is the bigger bathrooms, the different finishes, the amenities. But there are some other key things to keep in mind. So number one, parking. Do you get a parking space? If you do, is that space large enough for your vehicle? Because not all parking spaces are the same size, unfortunately.
True.
And also that street parking that the leasing agent told you was easily available, come back in the evening and see if street parking really is easily available before you sign that lease, because their definition of easy may not match yours.
Yeah.
So definitely that's one factor to consider. Another factor to consider is, before you sign the lease, see if you can talk to some of the other residents there. Ask them some questions about, does the property management company, do they come in and repair things when you request it? How easy are they to work with? How long has the property manager been in place? Because there's a lot of turnover among property management staff and personnel. So those kinds of questions will get you a feel for what kind of value you're going to get for your rental dollar once you rent this place. Because if they don't come and fix stuff, then you may be on your own, and if you're not expecting that can be kind of traumatic. And you're not getting real value for your dollar. Other things to think about as you're going on these tours: take pictures of kitchens, the views that you're going to be seeing, that kind of thing. Because what happens is you go on this whirlwind tour, you've seen 10 communities, you get down to your kitchen table and you're like, okay, which one was which again? Which one had this thing? And the pictures will help immensely when you're trying to sort through that process. And the last little tip I give is, even while you're on the tour, if you see something that you don't like, you see a view that you don't think is great, or you see some small deficiency in the apartment, finish the tour and see the whole place. Because those little deficiencies can become negotiation points during your conversation with them later on, because it may indicate that they're having difficulty renting that particular apartment.
Again, that's something I feel like we should have known, but thank you for reminding us. You're right. It's those little things that are right in front of you that we're not tapping into.
Yeah. But if you think about what people are dealing with on a daily basis, like, you're subjected to thousands, if not tens of thousands of messages on a daily basis, and your brain's trying to sort through all of that. And then, oh, by the way, I need to think about, the fact that this apartment doesn't have a great view, so that may be a negotiation tactic. There's overload going on, and we don't have the time or the bandwidth to process all of this in the moment, unless someone has pointed out, let's focus on this while we're going through this process. So there's a lot of things that people can do. It's just, you don't have the bandwidth to think of everything at in that moment.
Your one tip that really stood out to me, that it does aggravate me sometimes when I do visit some friends, is, you're right, the parking situations. Well, they have the 1-star in front of their apartment. Now I'm driving through this complex and I'm walking a half a mile just to get to their house because I need to look for a spot with a star or not a number on it. And when you're the owner, you're like, it doesn't matter. Like, my spot's there. But when you have people over, it's like, can I actually accommodate not just the people in the house, but the cars outside?
Yeah. It's parking has basically become a competitive Olympic sport, is what's really going on.
You're so right. So is there a specific way you do recommend paying for rent, though? Cash, credit, check? Is there one?
I don't recommend cash, and that's both from the renter and the landlord standpoint. Because from the landlord standpoint, like, cash is whoever has it can spend it. So with cash, it makes it difficult for management and logistics and all of that. But the other part is, you want a record of having paid, and that makes, and if you're paying in terms of check, or some kind of automatic transfer or whatever, it makes keeping records a lot easier for both renter and landlord. Now, the one way I don't recommend that you pay is directly with a credit card.
Okay, why is that?
The reason why I say that is because there are typically convenience fees that are charged when you pay rent with a credit card. And those fees range anywhere from 3 to 5%.
That adds up.
Yeah, it's huge. If we're talking paying rent, which is like $1,000, like, that's like $50. And there's a lot better ways to use that money. Even going to movies would be a better use of that money than paying a convenience fee.
Yeah,
honestly.
I'm like, gas, my trip to the supermarket. Now, one thing I have to ask, and I read this, and I believe you, but I don't believe you at the same time. There's a way to obtain free rent? Question mark?
Absolutely. So people think free rent is a fairy tale, and it's not. So what's happening is there's 2 ways you can obtain free rent. So one way is, free rent is a marketing tactic that apartment communities use to stand out from their competition. Remember all that competition that we talked about earlier? Well, that is a very real fact. And when someone puts free rent in their ad, guess what? People pay attention to it. It cuts through a lot of the noise and the clutter, and people will actually go to that community and apply. It gets people's attention. Now, typically that's a certain number of weeks of rent that they're making free, in some cases 6. I saw one community in Mountain View, California that made 6 weeks of rent free when you signed a lease. Like, that's $4,500 in your pocket right there.
Sign me up.
Yeah. So that's one way that people can get free rent. The other way that people get free rent is to actually work for the landlord. And people don't consider.
Yes, I think I have a friend that's a property manager, and then they have free rent because they're maintaining like certain parts of the building. Exactly.
And most people don't think about that as an option because they think of their landlord as their enemy.
Yeah.
And I don't work for my enemy. But that's not really the case. Landlords and renters are two sides of the same coin, and ultimately they want the same thing. They want a great place for people to live. So working for the landlord, and it doesn't have to be this huge, massive, 200 apartment high-rise kind of thing. It can be a 20, 30 unit apartment building, and what you provide in exchange for free rent can be things as simple as picking up around the community, making sure the pool is clean, being the first point of contact for your neighbors as when there's some kind of maintenance issue going on, maybe showing an apartment when people come to look. It makes the owner's job a whole lot easier if there's a point person on site who can really assess whatever situation is going on and then let them know if it's a situation where the owner needs to be on site or not. So there's really value that they can provide.
Yeah, great idea. And you could, if you do that though, can you still have another job? Or does being that responsibility, like the point of contact, have to be your sole job for that time being?
No, it doesn't have to be your sole job. In fact, in the book, I tell a story of someone who graduated from college. They had no property management experience at all. The closest thing is that they had, spoken to some maintenance people when they were an RA in college. So what this person did was he went out, he started talking to different property managers to get an idea of kind of what the job was like. And he also went out and bought a toolbox with some tools to let them know that he was ready to hit the ground running. So he took on that role because he wanted the opportunity to try out different jobs and professions without the pressure of having to stay in those jobs, long term if it wasn't what he wanted. And he did this role for about 4 years. And he was managing the property. He had these other jobs, his other full-time jobs on the side, and his community was smaller. It was about 20, 25 units. And so this was his side gig. And as side gigs go, it's really valuable.
For sure.
So you don't necessarily have to manage the property full time to get the value out of this.
Sounds even better. Okay, so here's the deal. We got to grab a copy of Rental Secrets. You can head to rentalsecrets.net to grab yours. You can always shoot Justin an email, and I'm pretty sure you have a ton more questions than just the ones that I asked today. His email is justin@rentalsecrets.net. That's RENTAL secrets, SECRETS.net. You can even give him a call. The number 408-755-5095, or follow him on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter @Rental Secrets. Justin Pogue, I feel like I asked you so many things, so I'm not even sorry. Thank you for answering every single one of the questions that I had today.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's just there's no education for renters out there that's speaking to them from this perspective. So it's really needed and valuable today.
And thank you for being that person to try to educate not just your fellow peers, but generations to come as well.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be here.
So Justin, again, thanks for joining us today and making us feel like this whole process is a little less stressful and that the renters have power. That's going to do it for us on another episode of the Brand Ambassador Select podcast. I'm your host, Lenore, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode like all this important information that we learned today, and we'll see you next time.